Charlie Chaplin stands beside his film camera on stage 3 of his Hollywood studio, explaining the intricacies of silent cinema to Winston Churchill, who leans forward with the intense curiosity that defines his approach to everything new. Churchill adjusts his bow tie and declares with characteristic enthusiasm, "My dear Charlie, this city lights of yours, it's not just entertainment, it's art that speaks a universal language." What unfolds during the next 2 hours and 17 minutes of their studio tour doesn't just cement an unlikely friendship between a British statesman and an American entertainer, it reveals how great minds recognize greatness across completely different fields, and how art can bridge the gap between politics and humanity. Charlie Chaplin Studios, Hollywood, September 24, 1929. Tuesday afternoon, 3:15. The California sun streams through the studio skylights as Charlie personally guides his distinguished British guests through the creative heart of his filmmaking empire. Winston Churchill, at 54, is between political appointments, having lost his Chancellor position after the Conservative election defeat. He's using this 3-month North American tour to lecture, write, and meet influential figures who might prove valuable for Britain's future. Accompanying Churchill are his 18-year-old son Randolph, his brother Jack, and his nephew Johnny. All 4 are ardent film enthusiasts, making this studio visit the highlight of their Hollywood stay. They arrived in Los Angeles 3 days earlier as guests of newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst, whose mistress, Marion Davies, had arranged their introduction to Chaplin at her beachhouse party. That first meeting had been awkward initially. Churchill stood somewhat apart from the Hollywood crowd, hands clasped behind his back in what Chaplin later described as a Napoleon-like pose. But when Davies introduced them, both men immediately recognized something familiar: the weight of public expectation, the burden of being constantly watched and judged, the loneliness that accompanies fame. "Mr. Churchill," Charlie had said, extending his hand, "I understand you're a writer as well as a politician. We have that in common. We both try to communicate ideas to people who may not want to hear them." Churchill had chuckled. "Indeed, Mr. Chaplin, though I suspect your audience is considerably more receptive than mine usually is." Now, in the controlled environment of Charlie's studio, their conversation can develop without the distractions of party chatter. Charlie has planned this tour carefully, wanting to demonstrate that filmmaking involves serious artistic and technical considerations rather than mere entertainment. "Winston," Charlie begins, using the informal address Churchill has encouraged, "what you're seeing here challenges everything people think they know about cinema. Most assume we simply point cameras at actors and record what happens, but every moment you see on screen results from hundreds of deliberate choices." Churchill examines the elaborate set constructed for city lights, which depicts a city street complete with working gas lamps, detailed storefronts, and precisely positioned props. His background in military logistics helps him appreciate the organizational complexity involved. "This is remarkable engineering, Charlie. You've created an entire world inside this building. How do you maintain consistency across scenes filmed weeks apart?" "Attention to detail and obsessive record-keeping," Charlie replies, showing Churchill thick binders containing sketches, measurements, and notes for every set piece. "We photograph everything from multiple angles before and after each day's shooting. Every prop must return to exactly the same position." Randolph Churchill interrupts with youthful enthusiasm. "Father, look at this!" He's discovered Charlie's collection of mechanical devices used to create special effects: mirrors for forced perspective, pulleys for moving backgrounds, timing mechanisms for synchronized action. Charlie appreciates the young man's genuine interest. "Randolph, you've identified something crucial about cinema. We're not just actors, we're engineers, architects, and magicians combined. Every impossible thing you see on screen requires solving real mechanical problems." Churchill connects this to his own experience with innovation. "During the war, we faced similar challenges, making the impossible appear possible through careful planning and technical ingenuity, though our stakes were considerably higher than entertainment." "Were they, though?" Charlie asks seriously. "Entertainment shapes how entire populations think about themselves and their world. The films people watch influence their values, their dreams, their understanding of what life could be. That carries responsibility." This observation captures Churchill's attention completely. As someone who understands the power of communication to shape public opinion, he recognizes the political implications of mass entertainment.
Charlie, you're describing something I've barely considered: the cinema as a tool of national influence. How many people worldwide will see this film you're making? City Lights will probably reach 50 million people across 6 continents, Charlie estimates, more than have ever heard any political speech or read any book. The little tramp character speaks to audiences regardless of their language, education, or nationality. Churchill pauses to absorb this. In 1929, his own influence reaches perhaps a few million Britons through Parliament and newspapers. Charlie's artistic creations communicate with vastly more people than any politician could imagine reaching. That's extraordinary power, Charlie. How do you decide what messages to send those 50 million people? "I try to remind them of their common humanity," Charlie explains as he adjusts camera settings for the afternoon shooting. "The little tramp succeeds because he represents qualities everyone recognizes: dignity in difficult circumstances, kindness despite hardship, hope when logic suggests despair." They move to the editing room, where Charlie demonstrates how individual shots combine to create emotional narratives. Churchill watches fascinated as Charlie explains the rhythm of cutting, the psychology of visual sequences, the mathematics of timing that makes comedy work. "This editing process reminds me of constructing political arguments. You select specific moments from larger experiences and arrange them to guide the audience toward particular conclusions." Exactly, but cinema adds emotional manipulation that pure argument cannot achieve. Watch this sequence. Charlie screens a rough cut from City Lights, showing the blind flower girl mistaking the tramp for a wealthy customer. The scene combines comedy and pathos in ways that make the audience simultaneously laugh and feel protective toward both characters. "Remarkable," Churchill murmurs. "You've created empathy for fictional people by showing us their private hopes and fears. That's more powerful than any political propaganda." "And more dangerous," Charlie adds. "Politicians can be argued against, but emotional manipulation bypasses rational thought completely. Cinema influences people below the level of conscious awareness." As they continue the tour, Churchill asks detailed questions about every aspect of production: the economics of filmmaking, the technical challenges of international distribution, the relationship between artistic vision and commercial success. "Charlie, you've built an entire industry around your creative ideas. How do you maintain artistic control while managing such complex business operations?" "By understanding that creative freedom requires financial independence. Studios want to control artists because they own the distribution networks, but if you can fund your own work and reach audiences directly, you can make whatever films your conscience demands." That's extraordinary power, Charlie. How do you decide what messages to send those 50 million people? I try to remind them of their common humanity,
Charlie explains as he adjusts camera settings for the afternoon shooting. The little tramp succeeds because he represents qualities everyone recognizes: dignity in difficult circumstances, kindness despite hardship, hope when logic suggests despair. They move to the editing room, where Charlie demonstrates how individual shots combine to create emotional narratives. Churchill watches fascinated as Charlie explains the rhythm of cutting, the psychology of visual sequences, the mathematics of timing that makes comedy work. This editing process reminds me of constructing political arguments. You select specific moments from larger experiences and arrange them to guide the audience toward particular conclusions. Exactly, but cinema adds emotional manipulation that pure argument cannot achieve. Watch this sequence. Charlie screens a rough cut from City Lights, showing the blind flower girl mistaking the tramp for a wealthy customer. The scene combines comedy and pathos in ways that make the audience simultaneously laugh and feel protective toward both characters. "Remarkable," Churchill murmurs. "You've created empathy for fictional people by showing us their private hopes and fears. That's more powerful than any political propaganda." "And more dangerous," Charlie adds. "Politicians can be argued against, but emotional manipulation bypasses rational thought completely. Cinema influences people below the level of conscious awareness." As they continue the tour, Churchill asks detailed questions about every aspect of production: the economics of filmmaking, the technical challenges of international distribution, the relationship between artistic vision and commercial success. "Charlie, you've built an entire industry around your creative ideas. How do you maintain artistic control while managing such complex business operations?" By understanding that creative freedom requires financial independence. Studios want to control artists because they own the distribution networks, but if you can fund your own work and reach audiences directly, you can make whatever films your conscience demands. "I see immediate parallels to my own situation. That's fascinating. You've solved the problem that frustrates every politician: how to communicate directly with the public without institutional gatekeepers filtering your message. Yes, but it requires accepting enormous personal risk. Every film costs my own money. If audiences reject my work, I bear the complete financial loss. Studios spread risk across multiple projects, but independent artists stake everything on each creation." During their discussion of City Lights specifically, Charlie shares his decision to continue making silent films despite the industry's move toward talkies. "Everyone insists I must add dialogue to remain commercially viable," Charlie explains, "but speech would destroy the universal quality that makes The Little Tramp work internationally. Sound films require translation, dubbing, cultural adaptation. Silence speaks to everyone." "That's a courageous artistic choice," Winston Churchill responds. "You're risking your career on the belief that timeless human qualities matter more than technological novelty." Sometimes the newest approach isn't the best approach. Progress requires knowing what's worth preserving as well as what needs changing. Churchill nods appreciatively. This philosophy aligns with his own political conservatism, the belief that society should change gradually, preserving valuable traditions while adapting to new circumstances. As the afternoon continues, they discuss the broader implications of cinema's growing influence. Churchill recognizes that film will become increasingly important for political communication, international diplomacy, and social change. "Charlie, I suspect that 20 years from now, controlling popular cinema will be as important to governments as controlling newspapers or radio broadcasts." "You're probably right," Charlie agrees. "That's why independent artists must establish strong precedents now, before governments realize cinema's political potential and begin regulating creative content." Their conversation is interrupted by Alf Reeves, Charlie's studio manager, who announces that the afternoon's filming must begin. Churchill and his family have been invited to observe the actual production process. Charlie is shooting a scene where the little tramp encounters a statue being unveiled in the city park. The sequence requires dozens of extras, precise timing, and multiple camera angles to capture the physical comedy properly. Churchill watches amazed as Charlie transforms from thoughtful conversationalist into meticulous director, demonstrating every movement for the actors, adjusting camera positions personally, and directing dozens of crew members with quiet authority. 37 takes, Randolph counts, as Charlie repeats the scene until satisfied with every detail. Perfectionism, Churchill observes approvingly. I recognize that approach. No detail too small if it affects the final result. During breaks between takes, Charlie explains his philosophy of physical comedy, how timing, rhythm, and visual composition create humor that transcends cultural boundaries. Comedy requires mathematical precision, Charlie tells Churchill. The pause before a pratfall must last exactly the right duration. Too short, and the audience misses the setup. Too long, and they anticipate the payoff. It's like conducting an orchestra, but the music is visual rather than auditory. As evening approaches, Charlie invites his guests to view rushes from previous days' filming in his private projection room. Churchill sits transfixed, watching the little tramp's interactions with the blind flower girl develop through multiple scenes. Charlie, this character you've created, he's more than entertainment. He represents something essential about human decency surviving in difficult circumstances. That's exactly what I hope to achieve, Charlie replies. The little tramp succeeds not through strength or cleverness, but by maintaining his humanity regardless of how others treat him. That's a profound political message, though I suspect most audiences receive it as simple entertainment. The best political messages don't announce themselves as political. They work by showing rather than telling, by making audiences feel rather than think. As the visit concludes, Churchill reflects on what he's experienced. Charlie, this afternoon has changed my understanding of modern communication entirely. You've shown me that artistic creation can influence public opinion more effectively than traditional political methods. And you've helped me understand that entertainment carries political responsibility whether we acknowledge it or not. Artists cannot claim to be apolitical when our work reaches millions of people worldwide. They shake hands warmly, both recognizing that they've found an unexpected intellectual companion. Despite their completely different backgrounds and careers, they share similar challenges: the burden of public expectations, the difficulty of maintaining integrity while achieving success, the responsibility of influencing how people think and feel. 3 weeks later, back in England, Churchill writes about his Hollywood experience for the Daily Telegraph, describing cinema as a strange and amusing world, but recognizing its growing importance for international communication. Charlie, meanwhile, incorporates some of Churchill's observations about universal human qualities into his completion of City Lights. The film's eventual success, both commercial and critical, proves that silent cinema can indeed speak a language everyone understands. Years later, when they meet again at Churchill's country home, Chartwell, both men recall their studio tour as the moment they realized how art and politics could inform each other without compromising either discipline's integrity. Their 2 hours and 17 minutes together in Hollywood demonstrated that great minds recognize greatness regardless of the field, and that understanding different approaches to influencing people can strengthen both artistic and political work. The friendship that began with Churchill's exclamation about city lights continued until Charlie's exile from America during the McCarthy era, proving that respect for each other's dedication to excellence can bridge any gap between different kinds of public service.